I had it pulled up and it's over. It hasn't started on YouTube yet, then.
All right, everybody. We're going to go ahead and kick off our championship round. It is my pleasure to kick things off. We had 40 teams at our competition this year. Apologies for the dog. We had 40 teams at our competition this year. Over 316 students between 12 states and 3 countries. And these are our top 2 undefeated teams from either division. I'm going to go ahead and kick things off to Bennett to introduce our esteemed final round panelists.
We have a wonderful panel here for you tonight. I'm going to ask each judge to please turn on their camera when I introduce you. So first, we have Mr. Thomas Azari. Thomas serves as one of the head coaches of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County's mock trial team. While he was a student at UMBC, Thomas and his team won a national championship. He delivered the opening statement in the final round, and for his performance, he received an All-American Attorney Award, one of 2 All-Americans, and I believe 15 total awards that he would go on to win while a collegiate competitor. Thomas also distinguished himself by being selected for Trial by Combat, which is College Mock Trial's one-on-one championship in 2022. Now, we know this weekend that there were a lot of heated disputes among all of our teams about how much time each side had left. If anyone feels so inclined, you can all watch an excellent round on YouTube at that competition between Thomas and myself. And you can all watch as Thomas viciously tells the judge that my time has expired. Added bonus, Ria is the witness that I was crossing. When he has free time from coaching, Thomas works for the United States Department of State. We're very excited to welcome Thomas tonight. Next, Ben Constein. Ben is one of the coaches of the University of Virginia's esteemed mock trial team. While in college, Ben competed for the University of Virginia, where he won awards as both an attorney and a witness and served as team captain. Virginia placed in the top 10 nationally all 4 years that Ben competed on the program, as well as finishing as the national runner-up. Ben obtained his JD from the University of Chicago in 2016 and is currently a labor and employment attorney at Jones Day's office in Washington. This past year, with Ben coaching, the University of Virginia won the national championship tournament. Thank you, Ben, for being here. Next, Jessica Alexander. Jessica graduated from Harvard this May, where she competed for their mock trial team. In 2022, Jessica's Harvard team went to the final round of the national championship tournament in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where she delivered the opening statement, winning an All-American Attorney Award for her performance. Harvard won the trial and the national title. In 2023, she led Harvard right back to the national final round, delivering the opening statement in the championship trial for the 2nd year in a row and winning another All-American award. This fall, Jessica will attend Harvard Law School. Thanks, Jessica, for being here. Next, Travis Harper. Travis is a paralegal at a civil rights firm in New York City. He graduated from Harvard University in 2023, where Travis was a 5-time All-American Attorney Award winner and a national champion, as well as a teammate of Jessica. 2 of those All-American awards are for their portrayal of an emotional witness in the national final round 2 years in a row. The other 3 are for Travis's performance as an outstanding attorney, where in 2022, I believe Travis was the only attorney in the entire country to win an All-American Attorney Award with perfect ranks. Travis is also one of, I believe, just 2 people ever to be selected to trial by combat 3 separate times. And Travis won the competition their senior year. Thank you, Travis, for being here. Next, Tony Asdurian. Tony is the head coach of the Park School of Baltimore's mock trial team and one of the most decorated mock trial coaches in the country at the high school level. Since Tony started coaching, I believe he's won 5 state titles. Because of the way Maryland mock trials competition was structured, Tony's teams never had the opportunity to try their luck at the National High School Championship Tournament. That is until 2021, when Tony's team won yet another state title, and Maryland was able to compete at nationals for the first time since 1987. Under Tony's leadership, his team won nationals in their first appearance at the tournament. And in 2022, the following year, Tony coached them to a second consecutive nationals berth. In his coaching career, Tony has taught mock trial and math to scores of future collegiate All-American performers, scores of actual attorneys, one NFL football coach, and also to me. Tony is a remarkable educator and coach, and it is an honor for me to have him here tonight. Next, Ethan. Ethan Marks is a rising senior at the University of Virginia and a two-time All-American attorney. This past April in Chicago, Ethan and his team won the 2024 AMTA National Championship. But that isn't the only final round in which Ethan has brought home the win for his team. It is a really special privilege to have Ethan here with us tonight. As some of you may know, in 2021, at the first ever annual MockOn Tournament of Champions, Ethan was a member and delivered the closing statement for the Indian Hill High School team from Ohio that stormed through the competition and took home the grand prize. It's a real honor to have Ethan back with us tonight to judge the competition he won 4 years ago. And last but certainly not least, our presiding judge, Anna Eldridge. Anna is a professor of political science at Rhodes College and the head coach of the Rhodes Mock Trial program. As a collegiate competitor, Anna was an All-American attorney and led her team to the national final round. After graduating, Anna obtained her JD from Duke Law School. She practiced civil and criminal law before returning to her alma mater to teach and coach, where she has received practically every honor under the sun. Anna is a recipient of the Reynoldson Award, which she received for coaching Rhodes to the national final round, as well as a recipient of the Neil Smith Award, which is given each year to one individual for their outstanding and exemplary contributions to law-related education. This past year, Anna coached two Rhodes teams to the national championship tournament, where they placed second and sixth, the latest fantastic finishes in a long history of excellence for a storied program that Anna has helped propel over the years. Thank you, Anna, for being with us tonight and for presiding over our final trial. And with that, I will turn it over to you to get things underway.
Thank you, Bennett. All right, I'm excited to get started, and I will give you just a second to get your cameras ready if you're doing pre-trial, and then I will ask both sides if they are ready to proceed and if there are any preliminary issues. Does the prosecution have any pre-trial issues that they'd like to take up?
Yes, Your Honor, the prosecution has a few brief preliminary matters.
All right, go ahead.
First, Your Honor, we ask that the clock be stopped in today's proceedings for all objections.
Certainly.
We ask for a brief recess after both parties' case in chief.
Of course.
We ask that pursuant to Rule 615, all witnesses are constructively sequestered.
Yes.
And we ask for permission to test the screen sharing function of Zoom at this time.
Absolutely. Please go ahead and do that.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. Finally, Your Honor, we ask for the opportunity to introduce ourselves.
Yes, please go ahead.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Micah White, and today I, along with my co-counsel, represent the state of Moorville.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Ellie Bear, and at this time our witnesses would like to introduce themselves in order of appearance.
All right.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Ashley Escato, but today I will be playing Sutton Scarlet.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Nathan Mahari, but today I'll be playing Colonel Mason Mustard.
All right. Anything further from the prosecution?
No, Your Honor. With that, the prosecution is ready to proceed.
All right. I will turn it over to defense. Defense, do you have any preliminary issues you'd like the court to address?
Yes, Your Honor. Before we begin, are we allowed to ask our witnesses to introduce themselves?
Absolutely.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Michael DeVoe, and I'll be portraying the role of Grayson Green. Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Journey Marlowe, and today I'll be portraying the role of Parker Plum.
Thank you.
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Sena Sayah, and I am joined by my co-counsel, Leah Kimaretti. Good evening, Your Honor. And we represent the defense in today's case.
Thank you.
Your Honor, we ask that all the privileges given to the prosecution are also extended to the defense.
Absolutely.
And with that, Your Honor, the defense is ready to proceed.
All right. If both sides are ready to proceed, then I will turn it over to the prosecution for their opening statement.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, may I proceed?
Yes, you may.
Allie Bear for the state. He couldn't let go. It's January 27th of 2023. A gloomy and rainy night outside the Body estate in Moorville. And even though it's stormy weather outside, it appears peaceful inside the estate. But that's not actually the case. You see, most people inside the estate don't know what's about to happen. In fact, Mr. Body himself doesn't know what's about to happen. You see, he's about to die. But how? In order to understand and examine just who killed Mr. Body, we have to take a step back, rewind the clock, and examine who Mr. Body was. Mr. Blake Body owned a company called Body Motion Pictures, commonly referred to as BMP. It's a very successful, multi-million-dollar company in the film industry. In fact, it's so successful, many other companies wanted to buy it for a pretty penny. One company in particular was called Lunar Horizon Production, or LHP. They were willing to spend $58 billion to acquire it. That's a lot of money that Mr. Body couldn't resist. When he sold BMP to LHP, there was one person who couldn't let go. Their name is Grayson Green. He worked under the supervision of Mr. Body for several years. In fact, he got irritated in his role. He couldn't stand his boss any longer. He felt that the company should be sold and he should receive a promotion. And when he was denied, he couldn't let go. Now, we as the government bear the burden of proof in today's trial. We must prove beyond a reasonable doubt Mr. Green deliberately, intentionally, and unlawfully killed Mr. Body. And I want to break down how we will prove that a little bit more. Starting in December of 2022, after Mr. Body plans to sell the company, which would leave Mr. Green without a job, he plans to get rid of Mr. Body. In fact, you'll hear and see testimony today. The defendant didn't even keep that plan a secret, saying, "I will do absolutely anything to stop this deal and save my career. I'm gonna make you regret it. Call LHP, tell them you've changed your mind or else." And when Mr. Body didn't change his mind, the defendant took action. On January 27th, Mr. Green arrived at the Body estate for a dinner party, wearing blue latex gloves with a brown bottle in one hand. He walks quietly to the kitchen, picks up a wine glass, and pours the contents of the brown bottle into that wine glass. What's inside that brown bottle? It's a lethal drug called atropine. So deadly it can kill someone within hours, within minutes. The defendant then took that poison-filled wine glass and served it to Mr. Body. And only a few moments after he drank that wine, he's confused, disoriented, hallucinating. He's rushed to the hospital, and in fact, you'll hear today that he tested positive for atropine. And only 5 hours later, Mr. Body died. Now, the defense is going to come up here and tell you these events are just coincidences. It's mere fate. All these events happen within 24 hours of each other. But members of the jury, I want you to keep in mind throughout the entire trial, Coincidences are not planned. No fact you will hear today is a coincidence. No fact you will hear today just happened. The facts you will hear today are evidence. Mr. Green planned and acted because he couldn't let go. At the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Mr. White, will come before you and ask that you find the defendant guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Do we have an opening for the defense?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can proceed whenever you're ready.
This is a case about unanswered questions. The prosecution argues that Grayson Green couldn't let it go. See, that's what the opposing counsel wants you to believe about Grayson Green. In their opening statement, they made a lot of accusations about Mr. Green, but here's the thing. They won't be able to prove a single one. Now, before we discuss that, I want to introduce you to Grayson Green. Members of the jury, this is Mr. Green. He was Blake Body's cousin and employee for years, until Mr. Body promoted him to CEO in November of 2022. Today, you'll hear how hard Mr. Green had worked to earn that position and how much he cared about the company. And he wanted to keep his job. But you'll also learn another thing. Mr. Green didn't love his job enough to take anyone's life, but the government left to conclusions that aren't supported by the evidence. And that's something they can't do. Because when they walked into courtroom today, they took on a burden. Because they accused Mr. Green of killing his cousin, they have to prove it to you. And it's not enough to just offer some evidence. They have to prove it to you beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's the highest burden in our criminal justice system. The prosecution isn't going to be able to prove that to you because there are too many questions and not enough answers. What you're going to hear today is that nobody, not the prosecution, not the police, and certainly not Mr. Green, have any answers to these questions. And when you listen to the prosecution's evidence, we're confident you're going to have more questions than you have answers. So as you go through trial today, listen out to the answers to these 3 questions. 1. How upset was Mr. Green? 2. Was Mr. Body healthy on the night he died? And 3. What really caused Mr. Body's death? Now, as the defense, we don't have the burden of proof. But we're still going to call 2 witnesses to the stand. First, you're going to hear from Mr. Green himself. Now, he's going to take that stand, look you in the eye, and tell you that he has nothing to do with Mr. Body's murder. He's going to tell you that he didn't threaten Mr. Body, just wanted him to reconsider the sale of the company. Lastly, we'll call expert witness Dr. Parker Plum. Dr. Plum will review Mr. Body's health at the time of his death. You'll learn that Mr. Body had a disorder that required medication. You'll also hear Mr. Body called Dr. Plum to his home the day he died for an impromptu appointment, and that Mr. Body was drinking substantially on the night he passed away. Dr. Plum also analyzed the state's toxicology report, and she'll explain the flaws in that very report. That's why, at the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Leah Camaretti, is going to come before you. She's going to walk you through all the ways the government failed to meet their burden. How the government failed to get the answers they needed to critical questions. And then she's going to ask you to find Mr. Green not guilty. Because there are too many questions. And the prosecution doesn't have enough answers. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. All right, I'm gonna ask you all to give us just a minute before you call your first witness, just so we can make sure we've completed our scoring. Okay, all right. Prosecution, would you like to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution would like to call Sutton Scarlett to the stand. And may I proceed?
Yes, you may.
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Hi, my name is Sutton Scarlett.
And Miss Scarlett, what do you do for a living?
I am a personal assistant. I've mostly been Mr. Body's personal assistant.
How long have you been Mr. Body's personal assistant?
From 2016 to 2023, as Mr. Body passed away on January 27th, and because of that, my duties were then discontinued.
Oh, what kind of role did you have for Mr. Body?
Oh, the job was intriguing but brutal. I followed Blake around all day, reminding him about upcoming appointments, managing the calendar, and honestly, there are so many more tasks, but I don't want to bore you.
As you were around Mr. Body, could you describe him for the jury?
Oh, he was devoted to work and to the company BMP as a whole.
What is BMP?
It stands for Body Motion Pictures.
And how long has Mr. Body worked there?
For the longest time, until 2022.
Can you explain what you mean by until 2022?
Well, Mr. Body was considering taking a step back from the company, and I actually was surprised.
Oh, as you said, he was considering taking a step back from the company. What ultimately happened?
The company stayed the same. In fact, I set a meeting with Grayson Green, and the meeting was to discuss Grayson Green's potential promotion to CEO.
Was he ever promoted to CEO?
In November 2022, yes. But then just 1 month later, and everything changed in the company.
What changed specifically?
On the November 14th, I think it was of 2022, Mr. Body received a letter from a rival production company to BMP called Lunar Horizon Productions.
Would you recognize that letter if shown to you in court today?
Yes, I would.
If the bailiff could please display pre-admitted exhibit 13 on the screen. Oh, Miss Scarlett, what is this?
This is the letter from the Lunar Horizon Productions to BMP.
And what did this letter contain?
Oh, they were making an offer to buy BMP for $58 billion.
What did Mr. Body do after receiving that offer?
Well, Blake called Grayson Green into their office to discuss the offer.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. You may take the exhibit down now. Miss Scarlett, did you hear the conversation between Mr. Body and Mr. Green at all?
Oh, I wish I didn't, but Grayson Green was furious.
What do you mean he was furious?
Well, Mr. Body told him the company was being sold, and Grayson Green, he just blew up and he started screaming, "I'm going to make you regret this. I won't let you do this to me."
Then what happened?
Then Mr. Body yelled back, and Grayson Green said, "This is your last chance. Call LHP, tell them you've changed your mind, or else." Then he stormed out.
Did you hear Mr. Green say anything further?
I never tried to spy. I did hear he once say, "I will do absolutely anything to stop this deal and save my career. Blake is done for."
I'd like to transition and talk about the 27th of January. Can you walk the jury through what you did that day?
Oh yeah, I attended a party at Mr. Body's estate at 7:45 p.m. I was just chatting with a bunch of people, getting to know everyone, and then I had a very strange recollection and interaction with someone or something in the kitchen around 9.
What were you doing in the kitchen?
I was just grabbing a glass of water.
What did you see?
I saw what I thought to be Grayson Green standing by the cabinets, holding a wine glass in their hand, wearing gloves, and it looked like he was pouring something into it out of a brown bottle.
Did you see anything else?
Well, then Grayson Green then held the glass out and asked Whitley to pour some wine into it for Blake to take the first sip. He was fine, just a bit drunk at first, but
Objection, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
This is lack of foundation.
To what specifically?
What the witness just stated, that she poured, or he took the glass and asked Whitley to pour wine into it.
Okay. Do you have a response, counsel?
Yes, Your Honor. The witness has established that there were several people in attendance at the party, and they were there with drinks at the party, and therefore that foundation has been laid that someone would have been there at the party pouring wine into a glass.
Okay. Defense counsel, can I get clarity from you on what specifically you think lacks foundation that the witness has said?
Yes, Your Honor. The witness is claiming that the same wine glass that was in the kitchen with Mr. Green is the one that he handed to Miss Whiteley to pour some wine in it, and then handed to Mr. Body.
Okay, so
And
go ahead.
she cannot lay the foundation for that.
Okay. Counsel, do you have a response as to how you've laid that specific foundation?
Yes, Your Honor. I asked the witness what she did that morning, and she said that she went to the party. And then I asked her at the party, what did you see? And she said she saw Mr. Green with that wine glass. And then I asked her, did you see anything else? And then she said and explained she took that wine glass and she gave it to Mrs. Whitley, and she poured that wine in the glass, Your Honor. And that foundation has been laid.
Okay. I'm going to overrule the objection. I think that this is one of those things that you can take up on cross-examination if you don't think that the witness has enough foundation. So I'm going to overrule the objection.
Now, Miss Scarlett, I'll re-ask that question. Did you see anything else after Mr. Green had that wine glass in his hand?
Yeah, then Miss Grayson Green then held the glass out and asked Whitley to pour some wine into it for Blake to take that first sip. He was fine, just a bit drunk at first, but then he started saying crazy things and everything was very confusing. Next thing I know, Mustard is yelling to call 911.
After 911 was called, what did you do?
Well, I watched the ambulance take Mr. Body away, and then I watched from the kitchen the ambulance driving away down the road, and that's when I heard a bunch of noises outside in the garden.
Noises? What kind of noises were you hearing?
I kind of heard like stomping, so I went to see, and I saw Mr. Green was stomping something into the ground.
Are you aware of what he was stomping into the ground?
Well, from what I saw, it was the same wine glass I saw Grayson messing with in the kitchen. It looked so similar, and the glass was in a bunch of pieces.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further at this time.
Thank you, counsel. Defense, if you'd like to cross-examine.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, I want to talk about something you mentioned on direct. Now, you mentioned some arguments between Mr. Body and Mr. Green.
Yes, that's true. They had.
You claimed there was an argument on January 20th, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And you said that this is when Mr. Green told Mr. Body, or else, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, Mr. Green was initially really upset when he heard Mr. Body was going to sell the studio.
Yeah, he was upset. I mean, he was about to lose his career.
But Mr. Body told you he wasn't worried about Mr. Green being so angry.
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay to Mr. Body's statements.
Hey, counsel, do you have a response to that?
Yes, Your Honor. According to 8033, this is Mr. Body's existing state of mind, as you know, he was just worried about Mr. Green.
Your Honor, may I be heard to that point?
Yes, you may.
No foundation has been laid that this is talking about Mr. Body's mindset at the time.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I think that the statement itself lays the foundation based on what she's asked. So I'm going to overrule the objection.
I'm going to re-ask you the question. Mr. Body told you he wasn't worried about Mr. Green being so angry?
Yes, that's true. I went to check up on him after the argument because I was a little concerned, and he did say that he wasn't really worried about it.
In fact, Mr. Green told you this is just how Grayson gets when they're mad.
Yeah, Mr. Green? Sorry, could you repeat your question?
Yes, Mr. Body told you that this is just how Grayson gets when they're mad. Grayson referring to Mr. Green.
Yes, that's true.
Now, a few days after this argument, you saw Mr. Green at his office.
I did.
He didn't seem upset to you.
No, not really.
Mr. Green was at the dinner party January 27th.
Yes, he attended the party as well.
Now, he didn't make a scene when Mr. Body announced that he was selling the company, did he?
No, he was just kind of off. I mean, a little away from the rest of us.
No, he didn't yell at Mr. Body.
No, he didn't.
He just walked out.
Yeah, he just walked out.
Now let's talk about what you saw at the dinner party on January 27th. You saw Mr. Green in the kitchen around 9 p.m.?
Yeah, I went to go grab a glass of water. I was a little thirsty.
Now you claimed that Mr. Green was holding a wine glass, didn't you?
Yes, I do.
But the whole time, Mr. Green had his back to you?
Yeah, that's true.
Now, Mr. Green came back into the billiard room.
Yeah, he did.
He was holding a wine glass.
Yeah, he was holding the wine glass from the kitchen.
Is it your testimony here today that he was holding the wine glass from the kitchen?
Yes, that's true. Or he was just holding a wine glass.
You can't tell us whether that was the same wine glass from the kitchen, can you?
No, I can't, but it looked really similar.
Now, you can't tell us whether it was the same wine glass?
No, I can't.
You can't tell us whether the bodies had a matching set of those wine glasses, can you?
No, I cannot.
You can't tell us whether or not there was anything in that wine glass when you saw him enter the billiard room, can you?
I can't.
Now let's talk about what you observed about Mr. Body. Now, you were Mr. Body's personal assistant.
Yes, I was for many years.
You were with him a lot?
I would follow him around and do his calendar. I was around most of the time.
And to you, he always looked stressed.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why he decided to take a step back from the company.
Mr. Body's dark circles were painfully apparent.
Yes.
Mr. Body complained that they were constantly exhausted.
Yes, that's true.
Now, you knew that Mr. Body had some kind of condition.
Yes.
Now, you saw Mr. Body with a prescription bottle.
Yeah, as his personal assistant, I did.
Now, you saw him take a white and blue capsule from that bottle.
Yes.
Now, as you testified before, you also kept a track of Mr. Body's schedule.
Yeah, I do.
Let's talk about some events on that schedule. Permission to screen share what has been marked as Exhibit 7?
Yes, of course.
Now, Miss Scarlett, you're familiar with this document.
Oh, yes, yes, I am.
It's a copy of Mr. Body's schedule.
Yes, it is.
You maintain Mr. Body's schedule as a part of your job.
I do?
You regularly update it.
Yes.
It hasn't been changed since the last time you've seen it.
No, it hasn't.
The defense moves to enter Exhibit 7 into evidence.
Okay, is there any objection to Exhibit 7?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay, without objection, it will be admitted.
Now, Miss Scarlett, Mr. Body had an appointment with Plum on December 1st.
Yes.
Now, Plum refers to Dr. Plum,
Yes.
and that's Mr. Body's doctor.
It is.
Now, he had another doctor's appointment scheduled for January 11th.
Yes, if that's what the calendar says.
And another doctor's appointment for January 27th.
Mm-hmm.
One other question about the calendar. Looking at January 21st, 2023, the schedule is perfectly clear, correct?
Yes, it is.
Now let's talk about the end of that night. Mr. Body seemed fine to you up until around 10:30 p.m.
Yeah.
And then everything went wrong.
I guess everything didn't go wrong.
Now you testified you thought Blake was just a bit drunk, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it seemed like. He would seem fine, just a bit drunk.
No further questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay, are you, do you have a redirect, counsel?
No redirect, Your Honor. May this witness be excused?
Yes, this witness may be excused. All right, give us just a minute to make sure that we've got this page of our score sheets completed, and then we'll call the next witness. Okay, we can go ahead and call our second prosecution witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The state calls Colonel Mason Mustard to the stand. May I proceed?
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Please, introduce yourself to the jury.
Hello, my name is Colonel Mason Mustard.
Colonel Mustard, what do you do for a living?
Currently, I serve as a, Currently, I serve as a surgeon at the U.S. Army Medical Corps.
What do you do as an Army surgeon?
As an Army surgeon, I'm tasked with providing swift and precise medical care in high-pressure situations.
How did you become an Army surgeon?
I pursued my medical degree at the Uniformed Services University of Health Sciences before completing my residency at Walter Reed National Military Medical Center.
Now, I'd like to talk about today's case. How does your work relate to today's case?
I was the acting physician who treated Blake Body on January 27th, 2023.
Let's start at the beginning. Did you know Blake Body?
Yes, I met Blake Body through his sister. We went to school together, and after graduating, I met him at one of his famous dinner parties at the Body estate. We soon became friends after that.
You mentioned that you treated Mr. Body on the 27th. When did you first see him that night?
That night, I met Blake and his spouse, Whitley, at their estate at about 7:30 for the dinner party. I remember about 15 minutes after I arrived, Miss Scarlett and Grayson Green arrived as well.
After Miss Scarlet and Mr. Green arrived, did you notice anything unusual?
No, we all went to the billiard room for appetizers and drinks. It wasn't until about 10:30. That's when everything went wrong.
How did everything go wrong?
Blake began to complain about a severe dry mouth. Miss Peacock, his chef, must have brought him at least 4 glasses of water. But it just kept getting worse. He started saying that everything was blurry, asking people who they were, where he was, and what was happening.
What did you do?
I believe Blake was having a medical emergency, so I instructed one of the other guests to call 911 while I continued monitoring his symptoms.
What happened next?
The EMTs arrived at about 11:30, and by that point, Blake had only gotten worse. I informed the EMTs of my credentials and accompanied them and Whitley in the ambulance to the local clinic, High Point Urgent Care.
What happened when you arrived at High Point Urgent Care?
Blake was immediately admitted to the clinic's ICU, but as the clinic was shorthanded and their only physician was treating another stroke patient, I had no choice but to treat Blake myself, along with 2 on-call nurses.
How did you treat Mr. Body?
I completed a comprehensive examination of Blake's vitals and systems, but Blake just continued to decline. He had trouble responding to me, he was vomiting frequently, and it was clear that he was experiencing a severe respiratory distress.
Were you able to find a cause for this?
Yes. Blake's specific combination of symptoms was consistent with what's known as anticholinergic poison.
Would you recognize a chart of the symptoms of anticholinergic poisoning?
Yes, I would.
Could the bailiff please display what's been previously marked as Exhibit 6? What is this?
This is a chart of the sources and symptoms of anticholinergic poisoning.
Has it been changed or altered in any way since the last time you saw it?
No, it hasn't.
The state moves to admit Exhibit 6.
Are there any objections?
Yes, Your Honor, objection hearsay.
Okay. Why do you think that this is hearsay?
Your Honor, these are out-of-court statements being taken for the truth of the matter asserted.
Okay. What is your response?
Your Honor, pursuant to Rule 703, experts are allowed to rely on hearsay in coming to their conclusions. Today, Colonel Mustard will not become a conduit for hearsay. He will not verbatim testify to the contents of this exhibit. However, he will explain how he used this exhibit to come to his conclusions.
Okay, counsel, do you have a response to that?
Yes, Your Honor. Opposing counsel got the first prong of Rule 703 correct, but they failed to meet the second prong of 703, which states that whatever is in this exhibit has to be substantially more probative than prejudicial. They're using this for prejudicial purposes and misleading the members of the jury to believing that there are alternate causes to that the cause of Mr. Body's death was atropine, where actually there may have been alternate causes to his death, like alcohol and the drug he was regularly taking, immunotropin.
Okay. Counsel, do you have a response to that?
Yes, Your Honor. The cause of Mr. Body's death is highly probative to today's trial, considering that Grayson Green is on trial for murdering Mr. Body. Any evidence which helped Colonel Mustard come to a conclusion on this fact is of the utmost importance to today's proceedings.
I'll give defense counsel last word on this.
Yes, Your Honor, we stand with our previous objection. We still believe that this exhibit is substantially more prejudicial than probative, and they haven't laid the foundation to show otherwise.
Okay, I'm gonna tend to, based on the arguments that I've heard, I'm gonna tend to agree with defense counsel on this. I think certainly the witness can talk about what they relied on to reach their conclusion, but I don't think that you've established that you need to admit this into evidence for the jury to review as a separate exhibit. So if the witness wants to talk about what they reviewed and the symptoms, they certainly can do that, but I'm not going to admit it as an exhibit at this time. So I'm going to sustain the objection.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Kirkpatrick? Thank you. Now, Colonel Mustard, can you explain for the jury exactly what the symptoms of anticholinergic poisoning are?
Yes. This particular type of poisoning causes a very specific combination of mental symptoms like confusion, disorientation, hallucinations, as well as physical symptoms like dry mouth, a blurred vision, and vomiting.
And of the symptoms that you observed Mr. Body to experience, were they consistent with anticholinergic poisoning?
Yes, Blake experienced each and every one of the symptoms that are commonly used to determine anticholinergic poisoning.
Based on this, what did you do?
Based on this, I ordered a toxicology report to find the source of the potential poisoning. But before I could see the results, Blake entered cardiac arrest, and a few minutes later, he was dead.
Colonel Mustard, you mentioned a toxicology report. Did you ever get the results of that report?
Yes, I received the results of that report shortly after Blake's death.
Would you recognize a copy of those reports?
Yes, I would.
Could the bailiff please display what's been previously marked as Exhibit 5? What is this?
These are the results of the toxicology report that I ordered.
Have they been changed or altered in any way?
No, they haven't.
The state moves to admit Exhibit 5 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, without objection, Exhibit 5 will be admitted.
Now, Colonel Mustard, from this report, were you able to determine the cause of Mr. Body's death?
Yes. If you look to Section B of the report, you can see that a sample of Blake's blood tested positive for atropine.
What is atropine?
Atropine is a drug which, when consumed in any substantial amount, will inhibit the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, causing the fatal effects associated with anticholinergic poisoning.
Were you able to determine the source of atropine?
Yes. If you look to Section C of the report, you can see that a sample of the wine from Blake's stomach was found to contain atropine.
What does this mean?
Based on the detection window and the time Blake began experiencing symptoms, Blake must have ingested red wine tainted with atropine between 8:30 and 10 p.m. on the 27th, leading to an overdose and ultimately his death.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. You can take down that exhibit now. No further questions at this time.
Thank you, counsel. Defense counsel, you can cross-examine whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Good evening, Dr. Mustard.
Good evening.
Before I begin, can you see and hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
I'd like to start by talking about your qualifications to offer an opinion in this case. You're an active duty surgeon?
Yes, ma'am. I'm here in Moorville.
That means you operate on soldiers in the field.
Yes, ma'am.
You haven't given an opinion on a person's cause of death before, right?
No, ma'am.
You're not a toxicologist?
No, ma'am. I just specialize in poisons such as these.
And just to clarify for the members of the jury, a toxicologist studies the effects of chemicals on people.
Yes, ma'am.
You'd agree that Dr. Plum, the defense's expert today, is a toxicologist.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's talk about what information you used to diagnose Mr. Body. You knew Mr. Body?
Yes, ma'am. I met Mr. Roddy a few times before.
In fact, you guys were close friends, right, Dr. Mustard?
Yes, we were family friends through his sister.
You'd agree with me in saying that it would have been better for an independent physician to treat Mr. Body, right?
Those would have been ideal circumstances. However, the nearest doctor was 10 miles away and we needed to go to High Point Urgent Care.
That's a yes to my question. You agree with me in saying that an independent physician would have been better to treat Mr. Body.
I provided the best service I could have, but yes, you're right.
And that's to avoid any potential conflict of interest.
Yes, ma'am.
But you hadn't treated Mr. Body before, had you?
No, ma'am.
You aren't his personal physician.
No, ma'am, I was not his primary care physician.
That's actually the defense's expert witness, Dr. Plum, right?
Yes, I believe Dr. Plum had been seeing Mr. Body for a few years.
You aren't familiar with Mr. Body's medical history.
At the time, no, I didn't have access to his full medical history.
You didn't obtain a copy of Mr. Body's medical history before treating him.
No, we were in a hurry. I tried to contact Dr. Plum, however, I was unable to reach them.
You took Mr. Body to an understaffed clinic to treat him, isn't that right?
It was the closest clinic, given the situation, and the nearest hospital with active doctors were more than 10 miles away.
Bringing you back to my question, you did take Mr. Body to an understaffed clinic, right?
I didn't know at the time, but yes.
Rather than a fully staffed hospital?
Again, the nearest hospital was over 10 miles away.
I want to talk about what happened at that clinic. The staff ran tests on Mr. Body, isn't that right?
Yes.
Let the record reflect that my timekeeper is screen sharing what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 5.
Yes, it will reflect.
This is a test you ordered.
Yes, this is the toxicology report that we ordered.
It hasn't been changed in any way since the last time you saw it.
No, it hasn't.
The defendant's stomach contest tested positive for atropine, yes?
Yes, ma'am.
The test didn't determine the exact amount of atropine in Mr. Body's system.
No, the test determined that there was atropine found in the wine in his stomach. However, his systems were in line with a substantial amount of atropine.
Dr. Mustard, the test just tells you that the level of atropine exceeds a predetermined threshold of 0.05 milligrams per milliliters. Isn't that right?
Yes, it was a positive result for atropine that was in the wine in his stomach.
You would agree with me in saying that atropine lethality is unpredictable.
Could you repeat your question? I didn't hear the last part.
You'd agree with me in saying that atropine lethality is unpredictable.
Yes, it can differ from person to person.
Survival has been reported with doses greater than 1 gram.
In some cases, however, that can be rare.
Dr. Mustard, without knowing the exact amount of atropine in Mr. Body's system, you concluded that atropine poisoning was the reason he died?
Yes, his physical and mental symptoms indicated that he did suffer from some sort of poisoning. Additionally, he tested positive for atropine.
It's possible that Mr. Body ingested a non-toxic quantity of atropine, isn't that right?
It's possible, however, the tests didn't reveal that.
It's possible that his symptoms were caused by exposure to a different substance.
It's possible.
Let's talk about what that different exposure could have been. The defendant's blood alcohol content was 0.16, isn't that right?
Yes, he had been drinking that evening.
That's twice the legal limit.
Yes, ma'am.
The legal limit in Moorville is 0.08.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Counsel, do you have a response as to why it's relevant?
Yes, Your Honor. This goes to our theory in today's case that there are alternative causes to the reason why Mr. Body died, and we're just bringing this evidence to prove that.
May I be heard, Your Honor?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Your Honor, while it is relevant that there was alcohol in Mr. Body's blood at the time, it is not relevant to know the actual legal limit in order to drive a car in the state of Moorville. That does not make any element of this trial more or less likely.
All right, counsel, do you have a response as to why the legal limit language is appropriate or relevant?
Yes, Your Honor. From this exhibit that we can see that Mr. Body had double the legal limit in his system. Today, our theory is that another alternative cause of Mr. Body's poisoning could have been alcohol poisoning. And because of that, it's relevant to our case.
I think because relevance is a very low bar, and because you've already admitted this exhibit, which says this language on it, I'm going to allow counsel to ask about this on cross-examination. So I'm going to overrule the objection.
You saw Mr. Body drinking, didn't you, Mr. Plum? Dr. Mustard, excuse me.
Yes, ma'am. I saw him drink a glass of wine.
Now, on direct examination, you mentioned some symptoms of anticholinergic poisoning. I actually wrote them down. You said that Mr. Body was confused.
Yes, ma'am. He was asking questions like where he was, what was happening, who people were. He was experiencing symptoms of a general confusion.
He was flushed.
Yes.
He reported that everything was blurry.
Yes, there were some instances of impaired vision when we examined him.
His speech was slurred.
Yes, ma'am. He had a hard time communicating with us.
You saw him vomiting.
He vomited a few times.
Now, nowhere in your report do you mention alcohol poisoning.
No, ma'am. All the symptoms.
Now, let's talk about another source of exposure. You reviewed a label from one of Mr. Body's prescriptions, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Let the record reflect that my co-counsel is screen sharing what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 15. This is the prescription label you reviewed, right?
Yes, ma'am.
It hasn't been changed in any way since the last time you saw it.
No.
The defense moves to enter Exhibit 15 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay, without objection, Exhibit 15 is admitted.
Dr. Mustard, after Mr. Body died, you learned that he had a health condition.
Yes, ma'am.
Mycentia gravis.
Yes, ma'am.
You learned that he was taking medication for this condition.
He was prescribed immunotropin.
That's right. On this immunotropin label, it advises parents to talk to their doctor about the safe use of alcohol while taking it.
Yes, ma'am.
It says the drug may cause severe nausea,
That's one of the side effects listed.
dizziness,
Yes, ma'am.
fatigue,
Yes,
and additional side effects.
that's what it says.
You didn't look into those additional side effects, did you, Dr. Mustard?
No, ma'am. Mr. Body had been on immunotropin for years prior, and usually immunotropin subjects don't experience the symptoms that Mr. Body was experiencing.
Bringing you back to my question, you didn't look into those additional side effects.
I considered it, however, I didn't look into it further, knowing the circumstances.
You didn't look into whether those additional side effects could be worse with alcohol.
I considered it, however, I didn't look further into it, ma'am.
Dr. Mustard, you don't even mention immunotropin on your report, do you?
No, ma'am. It didn't feel relevant to this case, as his symptoms were more in line with atropine poisoning.
You didn't even look into that possible alternative.
I considered it, like I said before.
Nothing further.
Is there a redirect in the state?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can proceed when you're ready.
Now, Colonel Mustard, on cross, you were asked about 5 of Mr. Body's symptoms on the 27th. Were all of Mr. Body's symptoms consistent with alcohol poisoning?
No, sir. Some of the mental symptoms, like confusion and disorientation, are unique to atropine poisoning.
Were Mr. Body's symptoms consistent with the side effects of immunotropin?
Not all of them.
What were Mr. Body's symptoms consistent with?
Each and every symptom, that Mr. Body displayed was in line with the symptoms for concern for atropine poisoning.
Thank you, Colonel Mustard. No further questions at this time.
Great. Is there a recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
Okay. With that, the colonel can step down. Is there any other proof from the states?
No, Your Honor, at this time the state rests.
Okay. We will take a 5-minute break if that's what's typically appropriate.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. just so y'all are aware, I've asked in the chat for somebody from each side to let me know if they are back, and the judges to just give a thumbs up. I think we're just missing maybe one judge, given who's DM'd me. And just need a representative from the defense to clarify when they are back, and then we will get started.
The defense is here and ready to proceed, Your Honor.
All right, terrific. And okay, it looks like all of our judges, well, actually, give me 1 second. I've heard from almost all the judges. Let me just check one more time. Okay, it looks like we've got everybody. Okay, all of our judges are back. Perfect. All right, so I will go back to camera on. And the defense may begin with calling their first witness whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Grayson Green to the stand. Good evening.
Good evening.
Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Hello. My name's Grayson Green. Nice to meet you all.
And what do you do for a living?
I'm the CEO of Body Motion Pictures. We make the best mystery movies there are on this side of the world.
Why are you in court today?
I've been accused of murdering my first cousin, Blake Body.
By now you've heard what the prosecution is accusing you of. Is their claim that you murdered Mr. Body true?
No, not at all. I don't know where the state got that from. Maybe one of the storyboards of one of our movies at BMP? Hemlock Holmes? Hint? But that fantasy is not reality. I didn't kill my cousin.
Did you hear them accuse you of using atropine to poison him?
Yes, which is bizarre. I didn't even realize atropine could be used on people. I only use it on my dog.
Did you own a bottle of atropine?
Well, yes, but not for what the prosecution is claiming.
Permission to screen share what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 20?
Absolutely.
Now, what's on the screen, Mr. Green?
This is a bottle of atropine. I actually purchased this one.
Has it changed in any way since you've last seen it?
No,
Is it a fair and accurate representation of the bottle you purchased?
looks like it to me. Yes, ma'am.
The defense moves to enter Exhibit 20 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay, without objection, Exhibit 20 is admitted.
So why did you own atropine?
Oh, I have a Shih Tzu. His name is Romeo. And he's getting a little old. He has glaucoma. And this is his medicine. It's for veterinary and intravascular or intramuscular use only. So I inject this into his thighs, alternating thighs each day to help delay his eventual blindness. He hates it, but he takes it like a champ most of the time, my little Romeo.
Is it possible to give your dog atropine orally?
No, the vet specifically told me that if I gave it to him orally, it wouldn't be effective. So I have to give poor Romeo shots.
Did you poison Mr. Body with atropine?
No, not at all.
I want to talk more about that incident, but first I want to talk about how you know Mr. Body. How do you know Mr. Body?
He's my cousin. We were estranged as kiddos, something going back in the family history, something with my mom. But after graduating from Yale's business school, go Bulldogs, I applied to be the head of production. Now, listen, I know my dad put in a good word with Blake, but it wasn't nepotism at all. Or at least I don't think it was.
Were you ever promoted?
Yes, I worked 18-hour days. I slept in the office. There was a toothbrush in my top drawer, and eventually it all worked out. I got promoted to CEO and had a 5% stake in the company. It was nice to finally be in on the family legacy, and even if the stake was a little less than Blake's, I still had a share in a $1 billion company. Not a lot of people had that.
Were you ever stressed out with your new position?
Not at all, actually. That master's in business administration and the hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt were worth it. It seemed like it took a load off of Blake, though, me being the CEO.
I want to transition into your relationship with Mr. Body. How was your relationship before your promotion?
I mean, Blake was hard to work with sometimes. Everybody is. We saw the business differently. Blake liked more cash grab, trendy movies, while I liked creating more timeless works.
Did things improve?
Yes, he made the fantastic decision to promote me to the CEO position. But after making that fantastic decision, he told me he was thinking of selling the company.
What did that mean for you?
I'd be lying if I said I wasn't sad or angry. I argued with him about it a lot. If he was going to sell the company, I'd be put out of a job that I had worked tirelessly for.
You just said you argued a lot. Were you present during Sutton Scarlett's testimony?
Yes, I was.
Permission to screen share. That's already been entered as Exhibit 7.
Yes, go ahead.
What's on the screen right now, Mr. Green?
This is Blake's schedule from around the time he was thinking of selling.
Has this
Objection, Your
changed in
Honor.
any way?
Lack of foundation, may I be heard?
Yes, you may.
Your Honor, no foundation has been laid as to how this witness would be familiar with Blake's schedule.
Okay, counsel, do you have a response?
Yes, Your Honor, we are actively laying the foundation as we speak.
Okay, counsel, do you believe that they can lay this foundation and they just haven't yet, or do you believe that they cannot lay this foundation?
Your Honor, it is the state's position that as Mr. Green was not familiar with Mr. Body's schedule, it is not possible for the state to lay the foundation as to how he would have seen this document before.
Okay, I think what I'm going to do at this stage, because this document is already admitted, I'll let counsel question the witness about what he knows about it. If you think that he goes beyond what he actually has knowledge of, feel free to cross-examine the witness to elaborate on that. So I'm going to overrule your objection, but again, you'll have wide range to attack any of his knowledge about this exhibit on cross.
To repeat my question, what's on the screen right now, Mr. Green?
This looks to be Blake's schedule from around the time he was selling.
Has this changed in any way since you've last seen it?
No, it doesn't look like it, no.
Is it a fair and accurate representation of Mr. Body's schedule?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Did you hear Sutton Scarlett testify about the argument where you said you killed them?
Yes, it caught my ear because it didn't quite make sense. You actually asked her about it. She said that me and Blake were arguing on January 20th, and I talked about something like end of you, but Blake was in New York. It says it right here on the calendar. I never said anything about ending my cousin, ever.
I want to talk about the day of Mr. Body's death. What plans did you have that day?
Well, I was invited to a dinner party at Blake's house that day.
Did you attend?
Yes, I absolutely had to go. I had to attempt at buttering him up so he wouldn't sell the company. Now, I have a bit of an ego, but I'm not above a few extra compliments or waiting on someone hand and foot if it means I get to stay CEO.
Also hear Scarlett testify that you were keeping to yourself.
Yes, I heard that.
Is that true?
No, I was talking with Blake the whole time, buttering him up to convince him to keep body motion pictures. I couldn't keep to myself if I was going to try to convince him to keep the company.
So how did the party go?
It started okay. Um, Not really a big fan of social events. Blake was ordering me around like I was a waiter, and then he made the announcement that he would be officially selling the company. So I took a break, walked around, and ended up in the kitchen. I figured I'd need to have an excuse for why I was gone for so long, so I looked around, looked at a few wine glasses, and just grabbed one and left.
Did you do anything with that wine glass?
Well, Blake had been drinking for a lot of the night, and just as I walked into the billiard room, he was asking for more wine. So I went to Whitley, his lovely wife, and had her pour some wine into it. Figured I shouldn't disrespect a man in his own home, and I gave it to him.
Now, Mr. Green, did anything else happen that night?
Yeah, about an hour later, he started acting really confused. Then Colonel Mustard said to call the ambulance, and I volunteered to, but my phone was dead. So I couldn't help my cousin. I told Sutton too, and the ambulance ended up coming around 11:30 or so.
Thank you for your time. Nothing further at this time.
All right. Is there a cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can begin whenever you're ready.
Good evening, Mr. Green.
Good evening.
You work at Body Motion Pictures, right?
That's correct. I'm the proud CEO. Yes,
You first started working there in September of 2021,
that's right.
and in November of 2022, you became the CEO of the company, right?
Yes, sir. I was promoted by Blake.
Now, I'd like to talk about what happened after you became CEO. About a month later, you became aware that Blake Body was planning to sell the company.
Yes, to a bigger production company, Lunar Horizon Productions.
Let's be clear, Mr. Green. You didn't want the acquisition to go through.
No, I'd get put out of a job if the acquisition went through. I didn't want that. No, nobody wants that, sir.
That's right, you didn't want to lose your job.
No, I didn't.
So you tried to convince Mr. Body to change his mind.
Yes, I was trying all the way up until the week before that deal went through. I'm a dedicated man, sir.
I'd like to talk about some texts you sent at the time. You'd recognize a copy of some text between you and your friend Reese.
Yes, my best friend Reese, he went to Yale with me.
Could the bailiff please display what's been previously marked as Exhibit 9A? These are texts between you and your friend Reese.
Yes, they are. Yes, sir.
They haven't been changed or altered in any way?
No, it doesn't look like that to me. No.
The state moves to admit Exhibit 9A.
Is there an objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Objection hearsay.
Okay. What's your response to hearsay, counsel?
Your Honor, there are statements made by two different parties in this exhibit. The main party making statements in this exhibit is Mr. Green himself. And as the party opponent, these statements are not hearsay. As for the statements by Reese, these are not used for their truth value. They're not used to prove that Reese was actually sorry. And as many of these statements are questions, they cannot contain a truth value. So for that reason, Your Honor, this testimony is not hearsay.
Hey, counsel, do you have a response to that?
Yes, Your Honor. Reese's testimonies, they don't have an exception, therefore they're still hearsay.
Okay, I just looking at the texts that are on the screen, I tend to agree with state's counsel that there's no truth value. The only one that might have truth value is didn't you just get promoted? But beyond that, I'm going to agree with counsel that the statements by Reese don't have truth value and thus are not hearsay. And I agree that the other statements are admission by a party opponent. So I'm going to overrule the objection.
Now, Mr. Green, on January 20th, you wrote, "I swear I've had enough of Blake. I'm absolutely done."
Yeah, I was frustrated about the fact that he was even considering of selling the company.
You said, "I mean, I'm about to lose my job."
Yes, I was confiding in Reese about it. It was bothering me at the time.
And then you sent, "There is no way I'm letting anyone take this away from me. I've worked too hard. I'll find a way to get rid of Blake."
Yes, I wanted to make sure that I could be the person who was majority shareholder. That's what I mean. I didn't want to kill Blake, if that's what you're insinuating. I just wanted to have majority shareholder power, sir.
But that's a yes to my question. You said that?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Could the bailiff please display what's been previously marked as Exhibit 9B? These are also texts between you and your friend Reese?
That's right.
They haven't been changed or altered in any way.
No, they haven't.
The state moves to admit Exhibit 9B.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, without objection, it will be admitted.
Now, Mr. Green, these texts were sent 3 days later, right?
Yes, they were.
You sent a picture of a bottle of atropine?
Yeah, that's actually the exact bottle that I got from Romeo's vet.
Beneath that, you wrote, "Problem solved."
That's right. Reese is also a big lover of Romeo and realized that Romeo was eventually going blind, and I'd finally taken him to the vet and gotten a prescription. So Romeo's problem and our problem was solved.
But let's be clear, you didn't mention your dog in these texts.
Well, no, I hadn't followed up with Reese quite yet, and I had a phone call with him.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. You can take down that exhibit now. Now, I'd like to talk about January 27th of 2023. That day you went to the Body Estate, right?
That's right, I did.
You got there at about 7:45 in the evening.
Yes, about 15 minutes after the party was supposed to start. I arrived fashionably late.
And after you got there, you went to the billiard room, right?
I did, yes.
In the billiard room, Mr. Body announced that he was going to sell the company.
That's correct.
And after this, you left the room.
Yeah, I kind of just wandered about the estate. It's a pretty big place, so I was able to, and I kind of just lost track of time.
A few minutes before 9, you ended up in the kitchen.
That's correct.
In the kitchen, you picked up a blue wine glass, right?
I picked up a couple wine glasses. I mean, Blake had a lot. He didn't really go too easy on the alcohol. And eventually ended up leaving with a wine glass that kind of sounds like the one you're describing.
Yeah, 20 minutes later, you brought this wine glass back to the billiard room.
Oh, yes, one of the wine glasses that I had picked up in the kitchen. Yes.
And you told Miss White to pour some wine for Blake into the glass.
Yeah, Blake had just asked for some. He, again, wasn't going all that easy on the drinks that night. We were all celebrating. And then I asked Whitley to pour some in.
You then handed the glass to Mr. Body.
Yes, sir. I was still trying to butter him up just to see if he would renege on that decision.
And an hour later, Mr. Body got really sick, right?
Yeah, he did. He did, sir, yes.
Back the next morning, Mr. Body died.
That's right. I lost my cousin that day. Yeah.
Now, Mr. Green, before today's trial, you were made aware that the police searched your home after Mr. Body's death, right?
That's right.
You were shown an image of an item the police found outside your home.
Yes, I was. It's the photo of the atropine bottle that I purchased for Romeo.
Could the bailiff please display what's been previously admitted as Exhibit 20? This is the image you were shown?
That's right, sir, yes.
Mr. Green, this is a bottle of atropine, right?
Yes, it's the one that I was giving Romeo. I take off the top and take a small little needle for Romeo's small little legs and take some into it and inject it into his legs daily.
Now, Mr. Green, I'm going to ask that for these next few questions you answer with a simple yes or no. On direct, you mentioned you purchased this bottle for your dog, right?
Yes.
Let's be clear. You didn't mention that in your interview with the police.
Well, I tried, but then the investigator moved on. I told him I could explain, but he didn't let me.
You didn't bring this information to the police in the 17 months since Mr. Body's death.
Well, I haven't quite been home, sir.
In fact, the first time that you've mentioned this is today.
I suppose it's the first time I've mentioned it. Again, I tried to tell the officer. He just cut me off and moved on before I could explain.
And let's be clear, this is the same bottle of atropine you sent a picture of to your friend Reese.
Yeah, it was the same bottle that I was using to give Romeo his doses.
The same bottle was found empty in a trash can outside your home?
Yes, Romeo had finished up the entire bottle. I was actually going to go to the vet the next day.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. You can take that exhibit down now. I want to be clear, Mr. Green. Because of Mr. Body's death, the deal to sell body motion pictures was never finalized.
No, it wasn't finalized. It was a rough few weeks after that.
So you're still the CEO of the company?
I am. Yes, I wanted to live on in Blake's legacy. Body Motion Pictures, it's named after him.
Thank you, Mr. Green. No further questions at this time.
Thank you, counsel. Defense, do you have a redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, you can begin whenever you're ready.
Permission for my timekeeper to screen share what's been remarked as Exhibit 9B.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, the prosecution asked if you mentioned your dog in these texts. But did you mention Blake in this text?
No, the texts weren't about Blake. I didn't mention my dog because I'd actually FaceTimed Reese to show how Romeo was doing better after I started giving him the medicine.
Thank you for your time, Mr. Green. No further questions at this time.
All right, is there a recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
Okay, then the witness can step down. You're not excused because you are the defendant. And we will take just a minute to complete our sheets. All right, does the defense have any further witnesses they want to put forward?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Dr. Parker Plum to the stand. Good evening.
Good evening.
Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Of course. Good evening, all. My name is Parker Plum.
What do you do for a living, ma'am?
I'm a toxicokinetics professor and advanced principles professor at the University of Moreville Medical Schools. I also own and operate my own medical clinic, Plum Primary Care. I like to say we work for the rich and famous.
Can you tell the members of the jury about your educational background?
I received my bachelor's degree in chemistry from Tufts University and my medical degree from Columbia University. I then completed my residency at the Cleveland Clinic, where I specialized in toxicological medicine.
What's a toxicologist?
A toxicologist is essentially a scientist who works with chemical substances to determine whether or not they're toxic.
You mentioned that you own your own clinic. What specifically does that entail?
At Plum Primary Care, we specialize in concierge medicine, which is essentially where patients pay upfront for round-the-clock fees and services. Now, we usually cater to affluent or high net worth individuals who prefer their medication or medical treatment from the comfort of their own homes or during their busy travel schedules. That's actually how I met one of my most famous clients, the late Blake Body.
Dr. Plum, why are you here in court today?
I served as Mr. Body's primary care physician for about 4 years. I was retained in that capacity to review the conclusions of Colonel Mustard in today's case to determine whether and what Mr. Body's cause of death was.
And did you reach a conclusion in today's case?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Did you reach that conclusion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Absolutely.
Did you use reliable methods when drawing that conclusion?
Yes.
Did you review any documents when coming to your conclusion?
Yes. I reviewed the statements of Presley Peacock, Sutton Scarlett, the report of Colonel Mustard, several photographs, a toxicology summary of poisoning symptoms, Mr. Body's calendar, an article about nightshade, an article about immunotropin, and a medication label.
Now, Dr. Plum, are you being paid for your work here in today's trial?
No, I am not, ma'am.
You mentioned that you reached a conclusion in today's case. How did you come to it?
I came to my conclusion by reviewing Colonel Mustard's conclusion, and I saw that he overlooked some possible explanations for Mr. Body's death.
What were those other explanations?
I found 3 main things. First, the risk of the drug Mr. Body regularly took, immunotropin. Second, the possibility of false positives in his test results. And third, the timing of Mr. Body's symptoms the night of his death.
I want to break those down one by one, starting with the risk of the drug that Mr. Body regularly took. How was Mr. Body's health?
Mr. Body had a condition, myasthenia gravis, that I diagnosed him with.
What is myasthenia gravis?
Myasthenia gravis, better known as MG, is a chronic autoimmune disorder that causes weakness or fatigue in the muscles. Symptoms can include loss of control of facial expressions, chewing, swallowing, and even breathing. Myasthenia is an extremely rare and severe condition, and it can be life-threatening.
How did you proceed after your diagnosis of Mr. Body?
I prescribed him a daily dose of 100 milligrams of immunotropin, which he began taking on December 18th of 2021.
What's immunotropin?
Immunotropin is essentially a drug that helps build muscle strength and reduce the symptoms of MG.
What effect did this treatment have on Mr. Body's condition?
Thankfully, Mr. Body initially reacted extremely well to the drug. Body reported to me reduced fatigue and even improvement in mobility. However, I also learned of some concerning side effects later on.
Where did you learn those side effects?
I read about them in the Moorville Times, a prestigious medical journal. Now, it was called, as I believe, Allegations of Health Risks Surrounding Immunotropin, Raising Concerns in the Pharmaceutical World.
Would you recognize that article if I were to show it to you today?
Yes, ma'am, I believe I would.
Permission for my timekeeper to screen share what has been pre-marked as Exhibit 16?
Yes, of course.
Is this a fair and accurate copy of the article you read, Dr. Plum?
It appears so, yes.
Has it changed in any way since you last saw it?
No, it hasn't.
The defense offers Exhibit 16 into evidence.
Are there any objections?
Yes, Your Honor, hearsay.
Okay. Why do you believe that this is hearsay?
Your Honor, this witness is going to be used as a conduit for hearsay, as this document is an out-of-court statement which they're using to prove the truth of the matter asserted in today's case.
All right, defense counsel, what is your response?
Yes, Your Honor. Under Rule 703, experts can rely on hearsay when making their conclusions, and that's exactly what Dr. Plum is doing here today.
Okay, state counsel, do you have a response to that?
Yes, Your Honor, as you ruled previously today, they cannot be used as conduits for hearsay.
I tend to agree with state's counsel. This came up with their witness, and in order to be consistent, I'm going to sustain the objection. You can talk about the conclusions that they reached from reviewing this article, but I'm not going to admit it as an exhibit to go back with the jury.
Yes, Your Honor. What conclusions did you draw from this article, Dr. Plum?
Well, I read it from this article that patients who used immunotropin were experiencing symptoms like seizures and cardiac arrest at a staggering 38% of patients. I found this extremely alarming considering how this drug might have reacted with the substances Mr. Body was consuming the night of his death.
Your Honor, I ask that this exhibit be taken down.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Are you aware of Mr. Body's alcohol intake on January 27th?
Yes, ma'am. Based on the toxicology report I reviewed, his alcohol intake was 0.16%, which is double the legal limit. We have no idea how that may have affected this already experimental drug. As many of you may know, drinking a lot of alcohol can cause dizziness, blurriness, which matched with what Mr. Body was already experiencing.
Stress your second point, that Colonel Mustard didn't consider a false positive test in the toxicology screen. Do you know how a false positive test could occur?
Yes. You see, immunotropin, the drug that Mr. Body took, and atropine, the drug that Colonel Mustard believes killed Mr. Body, are incredibly similar chemical structures. Since they are so similar, it's possible that a mistake could have occurred and the atropine the toxicology screen detected wasn't actually there. I actually made a demonstration to show you how similar these two substances are.
Your Honor, may we screen share Dr. Plum's demonstrative? Opposing counsel reviewed the demonstration before trial and agreed.
Let me just clarify, State, do you have an objection to the exhibit or to the demonstrative aid?
No objections, Your Honor.
Okay, then absolutely you can share it to the jury and the witness can use it.
Dr. Plum, please explain your demonstrative to the members of the jury.
As you can see it pictured on the screen, both these chemical structures are almost identical. In fact, they're only separated by a single oxygen atom, as seen highlighted by these two red boxes. This is why I mentioned a false positive is incredibly possible. Now, the machine that detected these two chemical structures may have seen the chemical structure of immunotropin and ignored that oxygen atom, determining that it was atropine when it actually wasn't.
You also mentioned the timing of the symptoms Body was experiencing. Could you explain how this factored into your conclusion?
Yes, ma'am. Now, according to Colonel Mustard, Body died because he was poisoned with atropine 1 to 2 hours before he began experiencing these symptoms. However, Colonel Mustard overlooked the fact that we don't know the exact amount of poison ingested, or how it even got into Mr. Body's systems in the first place, and his personal susceptibility. We don't know how his metabolism may have affected the absorption of this poisoning. So I put this all together and found there are simply a lot of conclusions we can't make.
Dr. Plum, what did you conclude after you analyzed this case?
Well, in short, Colonel Mustard's analysis was not comprehensive. He failed to consider multiple causes aside from atropine poisoning for Mr. Body's death. We don't know if Mr. Body consumed atropine at the party. For all we know, he could have got that substance in his system hours before anyone arrived at his home. I concluded that there were just too many questions and not enough answers to determine anything for sure.
Thank you for your time, Dr. Plum. Your Honor, we have nothing further at this time.
All right, is there a cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Yes.
Good evening, Dr. Plum.
Good evening.
Now, part of your job is to review Colonel Mustard's findings relating to the death of Mr. Body, right?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And naturally, you disagree with his expert results, right?
Yes, ma'am, I found some mistakes in his conclusions.
In fact, on direct, you talked about his findings and your opposition to each, and I want to walk right back through those, starting with the first one. First, you talked about Colonel Mustard's conclusion that Mr. Body died due to atropine poisoning, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And a potential opposition conclusion you claim is the myasthenia gravis crisis, right?
Right. A myasthenia crisis is essentially a myasthenia attack where a patient exhibits reduced fatigue and increased muscle failure all around.
Dr. Plum, you attributed myasthenia gravis crisis due to the symptoms Mr. Body was exhibiting, right?
Right. I found that it was a possibility.
In fact, you'd agree the symptoms he displayed are also consistent with atropine poisoning, right?
Right, as well as an MG crisis.
But Dr. Plum, you'd agree that an MG crisis you considered was slight at best, right?
Right. It's a slight possibility, but it cannot be ruled out.
Now, your second opposed finding was regarding the atropine results, right?
Yes, ma'am.
You claim there could have been a false positive atropine result?
Absolutely.
Dr. Plum, lab tests are very accurate, aren't they?
Most of the time, however, mistakes do happen.
But they're accurate, right?
For the most part.
And the probability of a false positive result is extremely low.
Usually, yes.
In fact, when you went through the testing, you found no errors.
Not direct errors, however, these tests did not actually test for immunotropin.
I wasn't asking about immunotropin. I'm simply asking, when you went through that testing, you found no errors. And that's true, right?
Not direct errors, no.
And you would agree that if atropine had been ingested, Mr. Body would have had symptoms gradually throughout the day, right?
That's right. If atropine was ingested, it most likely occur about 1 to 2 hours after he consumed it.
However, Mr. Body experienced their symptoms in a short time frame, right?
They experienced their symptoms, to my understanding, between 10:30 and about 1 a.m.
Therefore, ingestion earlier in the day is extraordinarily unlikely, right?
I wouldn't necessarily say extraordinary unlikely. However, it is most likely that they ingested it 1 to 2 hours before 10:30.
But it's extraordinarily unlikely, right?
A little bit, yes.
And the third opposition is there could have been a faulty medication manufacturing, right?
Yes, ma'am. I also had other oppositions to this conclusion, however.
I want to talk about this one in particular, but first, Mr. Body was on a drug called immunotropin, right?
That's right, ma'am. Yes.
He's been on that drug since December of 2021, right?
Right. He was on that drug for about a year.
And as he was on that drug for about a year, his body received it positively, right?
Until January 27th, yes.
And Dr. Plum, the likelihood of a defective drug is uncommon, right?
Uncommon, but it has happened before.
In fact, it's impossible to say if Mr. Body's death was related to immunotropin itself. Isn't that true?
I can't say it with scientific certainty, however, it is likely.
And finally, Dr. Plum, you believe that a cardiac arrest is the most probable reason for Mr. Body's death, right?
Yes, that's my understanding.
And you also believe that the most likely cause of his cardiac arrest and accompanying symptoms is atropine poisoning, right?
I find it likely that atropine may have been involved. However, I can't rule out any other factors, and I can't conclude it with scientific certainty.
Now, it's your opinion that atropine was the result of Mr. Body's death, right? Is that that's what caused it?
No, ma'am. I find it likely that it may have caused it. However, I can't say with scientific certainty.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further at this time.
Thank you, counsel. It is my understanding that time has expired so that there is no redirect. Is that correct, counsel?
Yes, Your Honor, at this time, the defense rests.
Okay. And since there's no redirect, we won't have any recross. I'll ask the defense if you have any further proof you'd like to put forward before we take a recess.
No, Your Honor.
Okay, then why don't we take another 5-minute recess? We will plan to convene. I'm Central Time, but Eastern would be 9:33. Okay, I think we both of the teams are back, and I think we're missing just maybe two just two judges. And so as soon as I get confirmation that they're back, we will get started. Okay, it looks like our judges are back. And so I will ask the state if they have a closing argument.
Yes, Your Honor. May I proceed?
You may.
Couldn't let go. After Blake Body made plans to sell body motion pictures to Lunar Horizon Productions, Grayson Green couldn't let go. Just a month after he'd been promoted to CEO, he couldn't let go of his job. Couldn't imagine letting go of everything he'd worked for. Mr. Green said it himself. There is no way I'm letting anyone take this from me. I'll find a way to get rid of Blake. Members of the jury, today you heard that Mr. Green did. A bottle of atropine. A deadly poison Colonel Mustard told you could kill a victim in hours. Then on January 27th, 2023, Mr. Green shows up at the Body estate with that same bottle in hand. Less than 5 hours later, Mr. Body is dead. Now, the government bears the burden of proof in today's trial. Throughout this trial, we've had the responsibility to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Grayson Green deliberately, intentionally, and unlawfully killed Blake Body. We did just that. We've proved that Grayson Green made a plan and took action because he couldn't let go. First, Mr. Green made a plan. Back in December of 2022, after learning Mr. Body was planning to sell the company to Lunar Horizon Productions, a move that would leave Grayson Green out of a job, Mr. Green plans to save his job by any means necessary. In fact, Mr. Green didn't even keep that plan a secret. You saw Mr. Green's texts. You heard from Miss Scarlett. Her words say it all. I will do absolutely anything to stop this deal and save my career. I'm going to make you regret this. Call LHP, tell them you've changed your mind, or else. Second, Mr. Green took action. On January 27th, 2023, Mr. Green arrives at the Body estate for a dinner party. That night, Miss Scarlett sees him in the kitchen wearing blue latex gloves, holding a wine glass in one hand and an unknown brown bottle in the other. This brown bottle, a bottle of atropine found in Mr. Green's own trash can. You heard from Mr. Green himself that at 9:30 that night, he takes that same wine glass back to the billiard room where he serves it to Mr. Body. And only an hour later, Mr. Body starts to feel ill. He becomes confused, disoriented, and is hallucinating, exhibiting each and every symptom of anticholinergic poisoning, a type of poisoning caused by atropine. In fact, Colonel Mustard told you that after Blake Body was rushed to the hospital, he tested positive for atropine. The source? A glass of wine consumed sometime between 8:30 and 10 p.m. 5 hours later, Mr. Body is dead. All because Mr. Green couldn't let go. Members of the jury, we know the rest of the story. Without Blake Body to sign the contract, Grayson Green gains full control of Body Motion Pictures, and a multi-billion-dollar deal to sell the company never goes through. Grayson Green gets what he wants. Now, the defense is going to come up here, and they'll try to tell you that all of this is nothing more than a series of coincidences. Members of the jury, it isn't a coincidence that Mr. Green brought blue latex gloves to Mr. Body's home that night. It isn't a coincidence that a bottle of the same drug that killed Mr. Body was found in Mr. Green's own trash can. And it certainly isn't a coincidence that Mr. Green is the only one to benefit from Mr. Body's death. Because coincidences? Stacked upon coincidences? Aren't coincidences at all. Or evidence. Evidence that Mr. Green couldn't let go. Don't let him get away with that. Find him guilty.
Thank you, counsel. Defense, you may begin your closing argument whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Too many questions and not enough answers. Throughout this trial, the prosecution has been trying to convince you that what they say is true. That Grayson Green killed his own cousin because he couldn't let go. However, the prosecution can't just say that this is true and ask you all to believe it. They haven't proven their cause beyond a reasonable doubt because they haven't been able to come up with the answers to some critical questions in this case. And that matters. Because when the government walked into this courtroom today, they took on the highest burden in the justice system. The law required them to prove premeditated murder beyond a reasonable doubt. Opposing counsel said, "We showed you coincidences, but what we really did is ask you questions. Ask the state questions. 1. How upset was Mr. Green? 2. Was Mr. Body healthy the night he died? And 3. What really caused Mr. Body's death? So first, how upset was Mr. Green? Today you heard from Mr. Green himself. He told you that he wanted to be CEO and that he was excited to be promoted. And he certainly was disappointed that he might lose his job. But you didn't hear today that he was disappointed enough to kill his boss. Let's start by considering whether you can trust Miss Scarlett's testimony. She told you that Mr. Green threatened his cousin, and she claimed this happened when they were together in the office, preparing for a meeting that didn't even exist on the calendar, and when Mr. Body wasn't even in the office. Now, let's talk about that atropine bottle the prosecution flashed on the screen. Today you heard that that bottle was for intravenous use only. It can only be consumed orally. Mr. Green had that bottle because he was giving his dog shots, not for any other reason. Second, when Mr. Body healthy the night he died? The evidence points to no. Mr. Body had summoned his doctor to his home the very day he died for an impromptu examination. And that follows 2 other visits in the last month. You heard from Dr. Plum that Mr. Body suffered from a medical condition that required him to take a drug called immunotropin. You also heard that Mr. Body was consuming excessive amounts of alcohol while on this medication, resulting in a blood alcohol content that was 0.16. Members of the jury, that's twice the legal limit. Third, what really caused Mr. Body's death? Today you heard from multiple witnesses who saw Mr. Body drinking alcohol throughout his last night. You heard from Dr. Plum that Colonel Mustard didn't consider all of the possibilities and that may have caused Mr. Body's death. Myasthenia gravis crisis. Confusion between the medication Mr. Body was taking and the poison atropine. Dr. Plum explained that the chemical makeup of immunotropin, the drug Mr. Body was taking daily, and atropine, the drug they claim poisoned Mr. Body, were incredibly similar. So similar that in fact the only difference between the two is a single oxygen. Dr. Plum said that it would have been possible for a mistake to occur, or it could have been a problem with the manufacturing of the medication Mr. Body took, not to mention how much Mr. Body was drinking and how that may have impacted all of these factors. Members of the jury, what our expert really told you was this. There are just too many unknowns to state a cause of death with any medical certainty. They want you to believe that Mr. Green couldn't let it go. He was so angry about a business decision that he killed his own cousin. But it's not the man you met today. You met a man who cared about his family, cared about Mr. Body, cared enough to never take his life. So when opposing counsel comes before you in a few minutes, I want you to remember that Mr. Green is presumed innocent. And to prove him guilty, the prosecution needed more than just guesses. They needed answers, members of the jury. And they didn't show you that. That is reasonable doubt. And that doubt, those unanswered questions, are the reason I asked you to find Mr. Green not guilty of murder. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. All right, counsel for the state, you may begin your rebuttal whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Unanswered questions. Members of the jury, at the beginning of today's trial, opposing counsel told you that 3 questions would go unanswered today. How upset was Mr. Green? Was Mr. Body healthy? What was the cause of Mr. Body's death? Today you heard that Mr. Green said himself that he was so upset he would do absolutely anything to stop the deal. Mr. Green was so upset he was willing to do whatever it took to save his career. You heard he couldn't let go. Now the defense has tried to tell you that Mr. Body's death may have been due to a prior health condition, but you heard from the defense's own expert that that's not just unlikely, it's unreasonable. In fact, both experts told you the most likely cause of Mr. Body's death was atropine poisoning. And the defense has left out that the defendant himself told a story today that he's had 17 months to tell, but chose to tell now. Why? Because it's a story the defendant has fabricated for today's trial. Members of the jury, we have the burden. I'm not suggesting that we don't, but we don't have to eliminate all doubt. We only have to eliminate reasonable doubt. So you have to ask yourselves, is what the defense has told you reasonable? Is it just an extension of the defendant's cover-up? Confident it is. Hold Mr. Green responsible. Find him guilty.
All right, thank you, counsel. I think we are going to just take a couple of minutes to make sure all of our ballots and everything are submitted correctly, and then I assume Mr. Dembski will tell us when we are good to give comments.
Absolutely. Once we have all the ballots, we'll start comments. All right, everybody, we have all the judges' ballots. Thank you so much for waiting. What a wonderful trial. I'm going to ask all our judges to come on screen now. Thank you all so much for doing this tonight. We really appreciate it. I know the teams appreciate it. I'm going to ask us to just go in order and to each give 2 comments. If everybody can, excuse me, I guess 4 comments. If everybody can tell each team their favorite part of the trial, the thing that team did that they liked the most, and then one thing that each team could improve on. So if we could do 2 comments for each team from each judge. So I'm just going to go in the order I see all on my screen. Let's start with Ethan.
Okay.
And teams, you're more than welcome to come on screen.
Great job, everyone. This was a really fantastic round. My ballot was very close. I think it was like 1 or 2 points. So sorry about that. Anyways, okay. Shoot, I'm on the spot. Okay. For the prosecution, I think the best moment for me was your cross examinations. I thought there were moments where you really showed that you were listening to what was happening in the trial. I thought in the cross of the defendant, you're like obviously doing the thing the defendant does without an aff, where you're like, well, the cop didn't ask me about this thing. And you were like, hold up, like you've had like over a year to say this, right? So I think when you're like responding and going back and forth with a witness, and then when the other attorney brought up the 703 ruling, I thought that showed that you were really listening, and that was really impressive. The best moment I thought for the defense was also their witnesses on cross. I thought did a really good job of not fighting too much. And I especially thought that the defendant did a really good job incorporating emotion to sort of respond to what I thought was a very tough cross-examination. So I thought that was really impressive. For the week, I don't know if I have like a weak moment for each team. I'll give like my one constructive note. I'm going to cheat and just for everyone, which I think with a case like this, just try to simplify as much as possible, especially like there were all these like drugs and like companies and people, and like we know the people because it's like Clue, but like in most cases you wouldn't know the people. So it's like just try to simplify those and avoid saying the specific names, I think, as much as possible, especially in openings, but even just as much as possible through the case, because I think the more you do that, the easier it is to follow. But yeah, I thought this was really great. Congratulations. You should all be very proud.
Thanks, Ethan. Next on my screen is Ben.
Okay, so like Ethan, I thought this was a very good round. I enjoyed it a lot. I will start off with the prosecution. I thought the best thing that y'all did was, again, your crosses. I thoroughly enjoyed them. I thought they did a very good job of taking apart what the defense was trying to do, which is very difficult. And a lot of teams struggle with that at the collegiate level too. The thing that I think y'all could have improved upon was really clarifying your theory of events from the get-go in your opening statement. Just saying this is a murder case, the defendant did it for XYZ reasons in paragraph 1. Defense, I think the best thing y'all did were your witnesses on direct examination. I thought your defendant was very believable and plausibly not guilty, which is all you have to do at the criminal level. So congrats on that. And your expert had instant credibility with a good command of the facts, which also not easy, especially in a sort of more science-y technical case. I actually will disagree with Ethan. I think there were moments on your crosses as witnesses where you guys were throwing in extraneous statements, extraneous things, and they weren't outrageous, but you guys would have been better off just a simple yes or no and moving on, especially I think for the defendant, because you had some really good moments. You did have good emotion, but then there were other times, like there was that one line about, I didn't commit the murder, if that's what you're insinuating. Obviously, that's what they're insinuating because you're the defendant. But because you had those good emotional moments, you probably didn't need to throw in that extra line to sort of take away from the good emotion. But as someone who doesn't see a ton of high school mock trial, this was really fun and really good to watch.
Next on my screen, I have Tony.
Hi, yeah, I agree with previous comments. I think the strongest thing I saw in the prosecution was the second cross. I thought that was very effective. I thought it built really well, and I thought although I thought the witness was great, it definitely put them in a bit of a box, which I thought was there. The strongest thing I would say for the defense was actually their second cross, I thought, for me. I also like the objection argument about Exhibit 6, and I thought that was very strong on both sides, but I just liked the degree of clarity in objection arguments. Often I feel like people give very vague sort of like they're sort of appealing to the judge to do the work for them. And I was very grateful to Anna that she kept asking people to clarify what it was that they objected to. And I was really delighted to see that both teams were up to it to be very specific about their objections. And I thought that the second cross on the defense was very effective. So I was very impressed, and it was just a real pleasure to watch this trial.
All right, next on my screen, I have Thomas.
Hey, yeah, everything you guys did, I mean, everything that was said, I agree with. I think like a lot of times when me and my contemporaries and fellow mock trialers do it in college, we often hear the comment from the judges that you guys are better than the real attorneys. I'm not going to say whether you're better than the real attorneys or not, because I don't know. But you're definitely better than a lot of the not real attorneys who we see in undergrad. So that's my, I guess, version of that comment that I will offer you. And I'm being serious when I say that. You guys are great. Favorite thing for the defense, I liked the cross structure and performance. I thought that the crosses were pretty good, a break from the norm here. And then on P, I really liked on direct when you guys improvised to a ruling that didn't go your way with your expert. I think it was the exhibit didn't come in the way that you wanted to, and then you adapted later on in the cross, and I thought that was excellent. So yeah, I think, and those two things generally are a comment that I would give to everybody is just be yourselves. I noticed a few mock trial accents. I'm much more harsh than a lot of people are with mock trial accents. I can't stand them. Be yourself. You don't need them. When they weren't there, I really loved it. And when they were there, I was like, that's not how you talk in real life. You know what I mean? Like, ugh. And if it is, then great. But if it's not, then don't do it. And we can often tell when it's not. And the only other comment I'll give to everybody is to slow down. That's just across the board.
All right, thanks, Thomas. Next on my screen is Jessica.
Great. Hi guys. So great job to everyone. I think that my favorite thing from the prosecution was crosses for sure. I'll echo what everyone has said. And I think from the defense, I'll agree with it was either Ethan or Ben. I think Ellie, when you brought up the 703 ruling, when you made your objection, I don't know if you plan to always make that objection or if it was because of how the judge ruled, but that was fantastic. And I think snapped into, obviously judges are always paying attention, but it made us, I think, snap back into it like, oh, wow, she's been listening, which was great. So whether that was planned or not, great job. And then I think something to improve on for P attorneys, I felt like you guys had really good tones throughout, but would have loved more variation in those tones because it was a great baseline, but it didn't go up or down. And so just try and see where you can vary speed, volume, whatever it is, to get yourself some 10 moments. And then I think for the defense, I would say I would have liked a bit of clarity, whether that came from signposts or your theme or something, because you're throwing so much at us, which I know is the case and the facts that you guys are dealing with, but it's sometimes hard to follow what you're actually saying could have happened. If you're saying they just had bad tests, or there's also another explanation that could have gone down. So just think about how you can sort of clarify your case for someone who's never heard it before. But good job to both teams and good luck.
All right, next is Travis.
Hi guys, congrats. Oh my God, so sorry. Congrats on being in the final. You guys are literally so amazing. Yeah, okay, so this is kind of difficult because I'm gonna do my favorite things, as in like one moment of the trial for both sides. And it was the entirety of the defendant being on stand. I think there are some times when like you watch a direct and a cross and you're just like nobody lost that at all. Like everyone did extremely well and it was like so realistic and entertaining and like very emotional. And unfortunately I'm very always about the drama and mock trial. So I really, really enjoyed that. I also want to echo what Tony said about the objections. I really appreciate when people are very clear about the rule also. And there were some moments when like someone was like, well, experts can rely on otherwise admissible evidence. And then the person on the other side was like, actually, there's also a balancing test in that rule that you need to talk about. And that was like such a great moment. And it showed that you didn't know, just like know of the rule, you knew the rule and what was exactly in the rule. And there were like so many moments like that. And that was really epic. If I had anything to say to improve on, it's super nitpicky. I'm a really big stickler, I would say, on the prosecution for like I love your guys' performance styles. But I think always you have to think about like if how I'm saying this thing is natural and like if the phrasing is natural. And sometimes I felt like there was some vocabulary that was used like with some of the witnesses, or I was like, did I attend a party or did I go to a party? You know? Did I consume a glass of wine or did I drink a glass of wine? You know, like super small, nitpicky things like that, that like on the whole make your performance seem a lot more believable. But like again, I think all that really matters is like that you guys were super performative and like fun to listen to and believable. And so I thought that was amazing and great. And I think on defense, I would say that I, oh my God, sorry, I lost my train of thought. Oh, forgive me. Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I actually completely lost my train of thought. Um, I will actually just take the low-hanging fruit response and also say that slowing down would have been great in some of the speeches also. Just because like especially on Zoom, like it's easy to miss things. So you got to make sure you're just very slow, just so everyone's paying attention. But yeah, that was an amazing round. Thank you guys for letting me watch.
All right, thanks, Travis. And last but not least, our presider, Anna.
All right. I will echo everybody else and say what an incredible job this is. So I have high school age children myself, and I can't imagine their friends and them doing this. So I'm very familiar with your age group. And I'm just so impressed at the work that you all put forward. I thought you did amazing. Props to the folks that put this together, Ben, Bennett, and Ria. This is an incredible opportunity to see great high school mock. So thank you guys for doing that. If you ever saw my team go against Ben and Ethan's team, this would make perfect sense to you that I would disagree with what Ben said about witness answers, because I love a good combative witness on cross, and Ben and Ethan know it because that's how I coach my kids. So for me, I loved the witnesses that pushed back a little. And for me, like I just loved the last expert and the last cross. So those are my highlights from the defense and from the prosecution. Things to work on. This is like a really hyper technical legal thing. And I know high school mock may not quite work this way, but I see it even in college mock. Technically, I know we do it in mock trials sometimes where we say like the defense is going to tell you X, Y, or Z in your prosecution opening. In the real world, that would actually be grounds for a mistrial. And I say that I didn't take off points for that because I understand you're high school students and you're not legal experts. But I do tell my college students that, and I do take off points for it at the college level. So I just want to put you all on notice of that. If it's high school standard, keep doing it. That's totally fine. But just be kind of mindful of sort of like the real legal implications of talking about what the defense is going to say before they say it. It just gets really, really tricky. So think about like from a content standpoint, I would say on the prosecution. And then on the defense, I felt like you all had good legal arguments on objections, but you didn't have the confidence. So just be a little bit more self-assured in arguing your objections, because you definitely had the content down. Just believe in it a little bit more. So that would be my one critique for the defense going forward. But otherwise, thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. I was really blown away, and I will stop talking so that you can get to the results.
Thank you so much, Anna, and thank you so much again to all of the judges. We really appreciate you guys coming in here and doing this. This was fantastic. Thank you so much. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Rhea, who will announce the winner.
Thank you, Bennett. I'd just love to start off by thanking all of our wonderful judges one more time. Anna Eldridge, Thomas Azari, Ben Constein, Jessica Alexander, Travis Harper, Tony Asdorian, and Ethan Marks. Thank you all for being here tonight. It is an honor to have you here, and we really appreciate you taking the time. Next up, I want to take a moment to recognize our incredibly talented final round teams. Both of them had a very, very difficult road to make it to the championship round. This year was our largest field yet, with over 40 teams and over 300 students. But despite that, both teams finished their preliminary rounds with an undefeated 8-0 record. That is a huge accomplishment. And it's actually the first time in the history of our competition that both teams in the final round have gotten here without losing a single ballot. So congratulations to you both on such an incredible performance thus far. Now I want to take a moment to recognize the members of each of our final round teams. So if we could get cameras off for everybody except our prosecution team. All right, representing the prosecution in our championship round was Kings High School. Our prosecution competitors were Nathan Mehari, Ellie Bear, Kaysen Kirkpatrick, Ashley Escoto, Sloan Rostula, and Micah White. And the prosecution team was coached by Emily Gilbert. Congratulations, everybody, on a wonderful performance. All right, next, if we could get cameras off for everybody except our defense team. All right, representing the defense in our championship round was Henrico High School, our 2023 champions. Our defense competitors were Michael DeVoe, Journey Marlowe, Leah Kamiredi, and Sana Saya. And the defense team was coached by Wet Smith, Maureen Stinger, and Kristen Walensky. Congratulations to you all on a phenomenal performance. All right, now if we could get all of our competitors back on screen. I'm sure you're all anxiously waiting for the results, so let's get into it. Now, we've broken quite a few records this weekend, so of course, it should come as no surprise that this final round is no different. This final round is the closest final round that we have ever had. We had 7 judges this round, which means 7 ballots. 1 ballot was tied, which means that it came down to 6 ballots. It was very close. All ballots were just a few points apart. And by just 5 points, our 2024 TOC champion is going to be, once again, the defense, Henrico High School. Congratulations. Congratulations to the defense, Henrico, and phenomenal job to our runner-ups, Prosecution Kings High School. Thank you all so much for joining us. We hope you had a good time this weekend. To everybody watching, give a hearty congratulations to our 2024 champions, reigning champions, Henrico High School. We hope to see all of our competitors again next year for hopefully another exciting case filled with twists and turns. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we hope you enjoyed yourselves and this wonderful round.
Thank you so much for hosting us today.
Of course.
Thank you.